All right. Let's put. I was just going to say, I don't know if you know, Becky, but we had to the Zoom link was expired. I don't know if it only goes for 2 years or something like that.
Oh wow!
I had to scramble with Amanda to get a new meeting up and going, and so I actually thought maybe that's what I thought. Maybe you weren't around for that, but anyway.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. I actually just popped on to the email and I saw the little email chain with the correct link. Okay, great. Well, thank you for being here, everyone. And again, I am sorry that I was running a little bit late today. So we will go ahead and get started with our service provider updates. So let's see. Who do we have? Oh, Sheriff's Office. Great. You want to go first?
Sure. So I'm Lucy Bailey from the Sheriff's Office Community Outreach, and then I'm here with Deputy Morgan.
Hello.
And I'll just go ahead and just share the crime map per usual. Just a moment. And then I'll have Deputy Morgan kind of go over it. And then if you need me to zoom in or out, I just kind of went big picture first. And if anyone has questions like specifically for areas, just let me know. Deputy Morgan, if you want to kind of just touch on this.
Just hopefully everybody can hear me. Sometimes our speakers aren't the best, or microphones rather, aren't the best on these laptops. But so a lot of what I see when I look at the crime map is an increase in theft. And that's kind of a broad umbrella that, can include some thefts from porches, kind of that porch pirate thing. It could include actual, like burglaries, that kind of stuff, thefts from businesses. You'll see quite a few there along TV Highway. And I think that's probably pretty indicative of businesses along the way experiencing shopliftings and that sort of thing. And we've certainly seen an increase, I would say, with a lot of that type of crime. What I experienced and what I hear from the other folks working on the road, it's sort of hit or miss as far as willingness to follow through on charges from retailers, from a variety of reasons. For a lot of folks, I think it's just easier and loss prevention to write off the loss than to follow it through with a criminal charge or prosecution. And unfortunately, that sort of allows for it to continue if people know that they can get away with that sort of activity. But as I look on the map and it continues into more residential areas, that tends to more often than not sort of be those crimes of opportunities, those porch pirates. What I can say is within the sheriff's office, we one of our detective teams does a lot of bait packages. And so we do that with vehicles that have GPS trackers, but we also do that with sort of fictitious Amazon boxes. Neighbors, community members often volunteer to have bait packages placed on their porch for an extended period of time. And then when that box gets picked up, we get live alerts on that and we can follow through and hopefully catch the people that are going around and doing that. As we get closer to the holidays, I think it's really important for people to be aware of that. That always increases, especially with around Christmas, all the gifts that are being delivered and things like that. We tend to see a lot of those crimes escalate. Just some, simple communication between neighbors can be helpful. I recently took a trip and spoke to both my neighbors on each side. Hey, if something's there, could you grab it for me, put it in your garage, and I'll get it when I get back. That way I just had that, I had that comfort in knowing things weren't just going to be gone when I got back. The other areas that it talks about are sort of vehicle thefts. As it gets darker earlier, that really increases the opportunity for these sort of crimes of opportunity, where people will go through and check door handles on cars. So it's really important not to leave valuables in cars, to secure vehicles, leave them as often as you can in well-lit areas, because often it's just see something in the car, the door happened to be unlocked, or it was easy enough to get into, and those items get taken. And those items can range. Last week, I had a woman whose car was broken into, and they took her credit cards and her debit card, and with others, purchased almost $5,000 in gift cards from a local retailer. So she was one of their victims in that, but it's another indication of her personal information, her credit cards and her wallet was left in there in a place that she felt relatively safe during daylight hours. So it's really just that moment of opportunity that they might find. So trying to limit those and decrease those. Let me take a look here. I apologize, I don't see the legend on this right now.
Oh, I'll go back up. Let's see.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can you see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
I see quite a few criminal mischief, and that's kind of a broad crime category. That can be everything from graffiti in a neighborhood to, what might be considered like minor vandalism. We do get calls for that fairly often. It's really tough to track down perpetrators, especially with like graffiti. It's very much a nuisance crime. But I can see throughout the county, there's really no concentration of that per se, or not really an obvious concentration. I do see around 185th and Shaw area a collection, which is not surprising. We do have some folks camping in that area on the east side of Shaw. We have our Hope Outreach team, who our homeless outreach program, who go and check in with people in these encampments, follow up on any police contact. So they're certainly aware of our presence. It's that part of Aloha which does get a fairly high patrol volume. So we try to limit that, but that collection in that area probably accounts for the Big Lots in that shopping center across the street, the Chevron, and then that area right around there, where we tend to get several calls. Anything else? The other thing that I think stood out to me, at least for this month, the stolen vehicles seem to be all within pretty quick proximity to TV highway, which again is not surprising. Often with these stolen vehicles, they want a quick, easy access to get to a highway and get out. We've seen, generally speaking, people coming into Washington County to steal vehicles from the broader Portland area. And then often those vehicles are taken back into that area. So again, seeing these Farmington, the 3 down there off Farmington, and the 4 or 5 along TV is probably pretty consistent with easy access for getting in and out of Washington County. We did, we try within the sheriff's office to apprehend folks. We often, if we can find the vehicle, try to get it stopped, try to get the vehicle returned back. But there's often a time delay between when the person parked their car for the evening and they walk back out and the vehicle's not there. Sometimes trackers can be really helpful. And I, my own personal vehicle, I have those little Apple tags. It just one extra layer of protection that lets me know where my car is if it's not where it's supposed to be. That's generally what I'm seeing on the map. And I'm certainly happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
How's the catalytic converter prop? Is that considered part of a mischief, or is that Where does that category fit, and how bad is that going on around here?
Sure. I will say that that is actually on the decline.
Oh, good.
In large part with some pretty hard-fought partnerships with the scrap yards who reclaim it. I mean, the catalytic converters are stolen because often they contain precious metals. That's why cars like the Prius was having such a big increase, because they have a larger concentration of precious metals used within the catalytic converter. A lot of places are no longer taking them. Scrap yards are no longer buying those, because if it's not from a known business, a reputable company, if it's just somebody coming in, the likelihood is that they're stolen. So they've been really working to get that. That's become harder than to turn over into profit, and so we're seeing far fewer of those. There was a time where I was probably going to 2 or 3 of those, within a week's window. I haven't been to one in months. So that doesn't say it isn't happening,
Sure.
but it's happening at a much lower rate. And again, those, can be crimes of opportunity. Having security cameras at home can be helpful, but if they're hooded, if their face is covered, then what we can see is an unknown subject taking it. And it can happen within, minutes. They can get under there and get it pretty quick. So some people have gone, on their higher truck, their taller trucks, and you can put plates underneath that protect it. Aftermarket, things that make it a lot harder to get to. But I think in general, we're seeing fewer of those types of crimes.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have two
also,
quick.
I don't know if you, sorry, just really quick of the catalytic converter thing. Jiffy Lube, I don't know if you all saw, but I believe today or yesterday, the sheriff's office put out some information, and I think some other news programs put out that Jiffy Lube is doing for free. They will etch your VIN number on the catalytic converter. You don't have to make an appointment or anything, and it's any Jiffy Lube. I don't know can't remember for like how long they're doing this, but that's a new program that they just started, I think yesterday or today.
That's great. Eric, you have a question? Oh, hang on, there we go. Okay, go ahead.
First, can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Wonderful. It'd be great if you could enable the chat, if that's something you're willing to do. For Washington County Sheriff's Office, no complaints about your service. You guys do a great job, and I work on TV Highway, and I can see you quite busy. I'm wondering if you would agree or disagree with this statement.
Mhm.
Working at the intersection of 198th and TV Highway, my subjective opinion is that I'm seeing more mental health issues on display in the public. And because that's not a call type that's specifically called out in the map, I'm just wondering if you're seeing more of that. Closing on my comments is that one of the tools you gave us that I notarized for the property owner I work with is an exclusion, so that you can just bounce anybody off of the property I work on. And that's a really handy tool. And I want to thank you for being very cooperative in providing that. But back to my question, are you guys seeing an uptick in mental health behavioral issues that might not be indicated on the crime map that you just presented to us? Thank you.
Thank you. On that point, the map doesn't show that. And I think it would be a difficult thing to just encompass in a specific icon like that. Because generally speaking, yes, within law enforcement, here in Washington County, but on a much broader, more even macro level, we're seeing an increase in calls related to mental health issues. What we know about our systems is that generally speaking, they're very overtaxed. We don't have enough inpatient beds for the people who need them. Outpatient services can be difficult to stay consistent with for people who struggle with mental illness. And so we do see quite a bit, and it often goes hand in hand with the transient, the houseless population seem to disproportionately, but I don't know that that's even true. I think we just focus more on it, have an increased level or an increased instances of mental illness, or at least some kind of struggle with mental health. And I say that because I think just in general, we very much focus on what's happening around our houseless communities, community members, and what issues that sort of brings to our businesses and our residents. It's really difficult to deal with from a law enforcement standpoint. Legally, there is no penalty for mental illness, and as well there shouldn't be. So our services can be really limited in what we can provide. Often what we can provide is a point of contact, access to resources, getting people to maybe an evaluation or a short stay in a hospital if they're voluntary, if the situation allows or requires it rather, that can be involuntary. But we find, generally speaking, I think we all experience a much higher level of that call volume, which is probably absolutely something you're seeing. TV highway is going to have a higher concentration often because that's our main thoroughfare for public transportation, which a lot of our folks utilize. And so that area can disproportionately have a higher volume of it. Generally, I mean, I think the calls I get are assist person type calls. So I get a phone call about a concerning person in a store who maybe hasn't broken any laws, but they're really loud and their symptoms are very acute at that time. And so my contact with them is then just going to be to try to separate them from the space if that's what the business owner wants, see what resources I can give them. The sheriff's office has a mental health response team. We partner with LifeWorks, and that team has a deputy and a clinician out on the road responding to these calls. As invaluable as that is, they're often on a call when other calls come up. So it is a well-used service within the sheriff's office. But all of us are aware of this sort of increase, this growing problem. More often than not, I think it's evidence of, one, the awareness of it, but two, just a lack of available resources for folks. It can be really difficult to get people into care if they're just struggling with their symptoms for a myriad of reasons. But to the second point of your comment was the exclusion, and absolutely, as business owners, people have the right to refuse service, to trespass people from their property. That usually starts with a verbal. We advise that person verbally, hey, you're not allowed back on this premise. For some businesses, the larger ones, that encompasses all of them, not just the one that they had a problem where they shoplifted or where they had an episode and threw merchandise around. That's all of the Walgreens or something to that effect. And so, but often it's just specifically that location. You're just not welcome here. What that does is when they return, or if they return, that gives us more than just the nuisance. We now have a crime. They've committed a trespass. We can at least remove them from it and get them out of that establishment.
Now, isn't the county working towards some solution for, I don't know, I guess a lot of jurisdictions are trying to collect an area, put them in an area where they're contained? Is that going on, or how's that?
The full details of that I don't have, to be fair.
Yeah.
I know it is something the county is very aware of. I know as the year end has come, the county is acutely aware of the amount of financial resources addressing or managing our homeless situation has cost the county and taxpayers. And they're going to have to evaluate whether that's been a good use of county resources. And that's obviously going to be at a broader scale, but sort of that shuffling is, instance doesn't really benefit anybody. If Beaverton pushes them into Hillsborough and Hillsborough pushes them into Washington County, well, Portland might be pushing them into us. And you're really not solving anything. You're not really addressing anything. You're just temporarily relocating it to become somebody else's.
Well, Becky and I get quite a few emails monthly about, the encampments, and it's like we're struggling with how to get that, how to answer our people. So
absolutely, and we see that quite frequently in our call volume from residents, especially when the county, comes in, or the landowners, PGE, whoever, they do like camp cleanups just to decrease the garbage or whatever else that is present. A lot of our residents think that is the camp going away, only to be followed with a considerable amount of frustration in a week when the campers are back because the location has been cleaned up, and it was only ever temporary. And I think that's more a communication shortfall between county interests and residents. But we see, what I'm sure I'm getting as many calls as you're getting emails with people who are,
Oh, I'm sure you're getting more.
With
So.
the situation.
All right, well, good. I just, Becky, I don't know if you want to get moving on to something else, or.
Yeah, we probably should. I do have one super fast question though. So I've also been hearing from people frustration about people being released from jail and then recommitting crimes. But I also have heard that there is a major shortage of defense attorneys and in the state, and that they just don't have enough people to handle all those cases. And so is that your experience? Is that?
Well, I think what I can say is that's kind of a twofold issue that you're discussing. One, as far as early release, our jail holds just shy of 600 at full capacity. Unfortunately, our staffing does not accommodate full capacity. We don't have enough general staff within the sheriff's office to have a full jail. And so then there has to be sort of a system of evaluating the individual, evaluating their offense, and whether the county is best served in their incarceration, or if it's better to conditionally release them and hopefully continue their process through the courts. That conditional release is just that. They leave, they sign and agree to a long list of conditions that, if they don't follow, can quickly get them right back in the jail, and then they're not eligible for this early release. So certainly there is a system of reoffense that exists across the board. People can be convicted to prison, serve their sentence, be free and clear, and reoffend. There really isn't a fix for that. We are aware of who we try to release, and we're not at such a, when we were really under a lot of the COVID strain, those eligibilities were broadened because we just couldn't accommodate as many people as we can right now. But our staffing is still a complicated issue. As far as the defense attorneys, I know Portland recently put out some information, which I don't think is probably inconsistent with what Washington County is seeing. And that falls more into the court's purview. We do have a lot of conditions around due process and people's availability to, the fast and speedy trial. And if they can't get a defense attorney, that's not a fault of theirs, that's a fault of the system. And I don't know how the county is going to try to fix that. I don't know that the county has a fix for that, other than to just be aware of that that's a condition that we're all struggling under. I do believe the DA's office prioritizes what they can, and obviously the more serious offenses are being pushed through, and we're trying to get those individuals through the system properly. But all offenses that find their way to the court system should be dealt with. How we do that, and if we can do that while still protecting their rights, is a delicate balancing act that we're finding ourselves in. So I don't think we're probably too far removed from what Portland is experiencing, but I know that that is a concern. We don't address that on the law enforcement side. We make the arrests, we file the charges, we refer it to the DA's office. How the courts work that juggling act is on the courts, and we didn't have any control of it before this problem, so we can't fix that part from our side. But I know on the enforcement side, we're still responding to calls, we're still making the appropriate arrests and filing the appropriate charges. So
all right, well, thank you so much for that. Was a great update.
Sure. Thank you.
And thank you for all you do.
Appreciate it.
All right, Tim, you want to go from THPRD?
Sure, I will. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Tim Bany, and I work in design development for THPRD. I'll start with the announcements for December. Winter registration begins this Saturday, December 3rd. In-district residents registration starts at 8 a.m. for classes and activities. You can also sign your kids up for winter break camps. Registration can be done on phone, online, or in person. The website portal is still the preferred and quickest method to register. But if you do want to sign up in person, please just check ahead with the facility to make sure you know what the hours of operation are. We also have our holiday gift card giving drive. THPRD is partnering with the Beaverton School District for THPRD's annual holiday gift card drive. Our goal is to help create a warmer, brighter holiday season for Beaverton District families and students in need. People can bring their gift cards to any open THPRD facility by Thursday, December 8th. Purchasing gift cards is a great way to support students and give families the flexibility to buy personal items, necessities, or gifts during the holiday season. Suggested gift cards amounts vary anywhere from $5 to $50 or more. As far as events for the month of December, we have on Wednesday, the 7th, we have our virtual Nature and Trails Advisory Committee meeting at 6:30 p.m. On Saturday, the 10th, we have a Sensory Santa visit at Conestoga Rec and Aquatic Center at 10 a.m. There are many children who want to meet Santa, but have sensory overload when it comes to the hustle and bustle of the holiday season. This exclusive event provides families an opportunity to meet Santa in a low-stress environment, no lines and no crowds. Your family will be given exclusive access to Santa for up to 10 minutes. Registration is required and space is limited. You can call 503-629-6313 to make a reservation. And then finally on Wednesday, the 14th, is our virtual regular meeting of the Board of Directors at 6:30 p.m. As always, we have our one-day volunteer events for individuals and families that can be found on our website. And that is it for the month of December.
Great, thanks, Tim.
Certainly.
All right, yeah. Justin from Tualatin Valley Water District.
Yep, thanks, Becky. Thanks everyone at CPO6. First up for us is a reminder, we are going to be pausing the fluoridation of water in the CPO6 area starting in January. So just want to put that reminder out there. This is due to construction at one of the district's main water intakes, well away from CPO6 out on Beaverton Hillsdale Highway and Western Avenue starting, I believe it is January 2nd. That main transmission line will come down for construction for the connection of another additional transmission line to it. And during that time period, we will not be fluoridating the water. And as soon as that construction is over, we will resume regular fluoridation. We expect that to be, right now we're saying around April 1st, plus or minus a little bit of time there for construction. So we'll keep everyone posted on that date as it comes, and project updates in general will be posted to tvwd.org/fluoride. I'll put that link in the chat when I'm done. We want to have another quick announcement. We do have some direct feeds from the city of Portland Water Bureau that brings water into our district. And as of right now, with the increase in the storms coming back and the last round of storms, that really stirred up a lot of organic sediment in the Portland Water Bureau's system in the Bull Run. And we are advising a lot of our customers that there could be an increase in a little bit of a light, almost light tea color to the water, and an increase in turbidity, which is the floating natural particles, organic matter in water. So we don't expect much of that to make its way to the CPO6 area. CPO6 has mostly served its water from one of the other sources that we co-own called the Joint Water Commission, which is Hag Lake and Bany Reservoir in the Coast Range. But every once in a while, that Portland Water Bureau source can get its way into the Aloha and CPO6 area. It is fairly rare for that water to go that far across our district. But in case anyone does see our messaging on social media and our website and things like that, warning of the potential for discolored water, that's what that's in reference to. It is just while the Bull Run reservoirs settle out with a lot of that last few rounds of really aggressive rain that kicked up a lot of extra sediment into the creeks and tributaries that feed that water system. So if you do see any of those messages, just maybe be aware, CPO6 is likely not a candidate to receive that water. And if you have any questions about it, you can contact our office, talk to our water quality staff. All of that, these things are advisory only. Water's still safe to drink and use as normal. It is chlorinated, disinfected, and all the rest of it. It might just appear slightly different with a little bit of seasonality changes in the Bull Run system. And then lastly, we were getting back on track slightly with construction at 209th and Farmington down there at the corner. We were delayed for a while there, getting some concrete supplies and concrete staffing shortages with some of the sub vendors that we're using out there, but we are back to doing underground piping work. So while you'll see a lot of equipment around the surface level of that site, the crew is actually working about 10 feet below ground in what will be the basement of the building that we will eventually get there. So I'm hoping by the end of next week or so, we should have enough progress on that underground piping that we'll be able to fly our drone over top and capture some footage and be able to show that again, because it's not easily visible from the street as folks drive by. And heck, anyways, that section of Farmington Road by 209th and Grabhorn is quite busy with truck traffic. Please don't go looking into our site anyways. It's not much to see there with all the dump trucks going by, going out to the quarry and whatnot. So that's it for me today. If there's any questions, happy to answer them. I'm happy to stick around, and I'll put a couple links in the chat here while we carry on.
Great. Thanks, Justin. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Oh, just a thanks. Thank you. Great. All right. So we are running a little bit behind, but before we welcome our guest speaker for tonight, I want to just say that after our guest speaker is done tonight, I'm going to open up the meeting for discussion about the development that is in the planning process at 189th and Bany or Hart. And so for those of you who are here for that, don't worry, I'm going to stick around and we can chat about that. So with that said, we will go ahead and welcome Ryan Kruger, who is here from Land Use and Transportation, to talk to us about the Kinnaman project.
Hi, Becky. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
CPO6. Let me get my presentation set up here on the screen. Looks like everyone can hear me and everyone can see me, so that's excellent. All right. And then share screen. Hang on just a second. All right. Here we go. So we're going to run through kind of a presentation that's going to mirror somewhat what the Board of County Commissioners is going to see, because at this point we're, as far as the design goes, still making our way through the different options that are out there. So we'll talk a little bit about, excuse me, both process and design options tonight. Talk through some of the things we heard in the open house and give you an idea of what's coming in the next 6 months. Already kind of went through what our agenda is looking like. The section of Kinnaman that we're going to be upgrading is going to be from 202nd West to 209th. Last year, Matt Costigan with the Capital Project Services team finished the Kinnaman extension or Kinnaman portion there between 198th and the east side of 202nd. So we're going to be tying into that with our project. We do know we've got a lot of different components of the area that we need to be thinking about. Butternut Creek Elementary is a big part of our design here, thinking about safe routes to school, thinking about how this project is going to serve the community and ultimately provide safe crossings for folks that are going to be accessing the elementary school. We've got the Aloha campus in proximity. Reed's Crossing is going in across the street. You know, Kinnaman Road is going to be extended as a part of that project. And we've got some county projects in this area as well. Right now, 209th is being upgraded, as well as Blanton. So those are, the Blanton project is in design, whereas the 209th project is actually under construction out there. So you're probably seeing some of that work going on. Just a little bit on Blanton. We do know that Blanton has the Blanton Street concept plan that has been done for it, showing a separated bike lane. And so that's something that we're likely going to see as a component of that project, almost certainly going to see as a component of that project. Although again, they're in the early stages of design. That is the separated bike lanes are going to be a part of that project. Kinnaman, definitely part of our design considerations, but not certain that we're going to have a separated bike facility in this area. But it's definitely something we're kind of looking at the regional perspective here when it comes to thinking about what's appropriate here for this section of Kinnaman. We do have a major street bikeway, and generally we're looking for a major street bikeway to have a buffered bike lane kind of be the preferred alternative. I'm going to move through kind of some of the existing conditions rather quickly. We know that there are especially some differences between the north and the south sides of the roadway here at Kinnaman. Here we are at 202nd looking to the east, and you can see the upgrades that were completed last year. And then in the foreground here, you can see the side of Kinnaman that is going to be upgraded as part of this project. We do have sidewalks in this section of Kinnaman on the south side. The left side of your screen is going to be the north side where there are not sidewalks throughout that section. That's something that ultimately we're looking to remedy here. And so here you get an idea of what that existing condition looks like there. We're moving a little bit further into the corridor here, talking about 205th and Stoddard. There is an existing crossing here, and that's one that we're going to maintain and upgrade. We'll talk a little bit about that as we get into the design, but we are looking at adding a rapid flashing beacon, so the button that you push and it lights up so you can cross the street. That will be a component of this project here, ultimately encourage that safe routes to school for Butternut Creek Elementary. So that's going to be a part of that. We do have some existing sidewalks on both sides of the street, more towards this middle portion of Kinnaman, but we're really going to be looking at adding and upgrading those sections and making them more suitable for routing folks to school and other area locations. Here again, we've got our cross section. This is really more for discussion if we want to come back and talk about any of the nuances here. But we're thinking about all the different pieces and how this roadway has some different characteristics. And that, as you see that landscape strip there on that south side, one of the big things we considered with that is the existing tree cover and some of those components. So really studying that, we did a tree study, the tree survey, and collected data on all the existing trees within the area. So making sure we're thinking about the characteristics of the corridor as we're thinking about our design. And so finally, we're getting here to the end of our section of Kinnaman. It's going to be part of this project. We got a few more recent sidewalk upgrades that have gone on down here. There was an project that was completed between here and our last stop that ultimately was a porous concrete that was used. We do know there's a significant number of existing stormwater surface ditches on this end of Kinnaman, so we're going to be keeping an eye on that. And that's going to be part of our overall design. And then at 209th, that's something that we're going to talk about in the discussion or in the concepts you're going to see tonight, is that the jury is still out on exactly what the 209th intersection is going to look like, because our analysis is still ongoing. That's just the nature of a project, a multi-year project like this. We're going through that process and trying to iron out exactly what's where and working with the best available resources. So Reed's Crossing is doing done some initial analysis, and they will be installing a traffic signal that is assured here, and it'll be 2024, 2025. We're working with them and trying to make sure that we're aligning our expectations with what they're doing. But as far as the number of lanes, number of turn lanes, left turns, right turns, all those things, there's a number of pieces that are feeding into that, and we're working very closely with City of Hillsborough to determine exactly what's going to be necessary out here. And we'll talk about that as we get to the end of this presentation about what that's going to look like over the next 6 months. So we've talked about the current conditions. Let's look at our 3 options. So the way that the Board of County Commissioners prefers to look at projects like this, they want to see a separated bike facility option, but they also want to understand what other options might be out there in order to meet the needs of the community and ultimately meet the needs of those that are going to be using this corridor to travel through, but ultimately use it to travel to their homes, businesses, and the like. So with option 1 here, this is actually a mirror of what was done from 198th to 202nd last year. So what we're going to see, and I'm going to start on our north side and work our way across. You've got a 1-foot offset from your right-of-way. You've got a 6-foot sidewalk, a 5-foot bike lane, 1.5-foot separator between your travel lane, 2 travel lanes in the middle, and then you've got the same thing mirrored as you have on the north side, on the south side with the bike lane and the sidewalk. That we really considered as the narrowest option fitting within the existing right-of-way. We do have sufficient right-of-way all the way through the corridor for this one, with just minor impacts on our side streets where our curb ramp returns are ultimately going to be getting a little bit larger. But this was really the narrowest right-of-way option. And we recognize that with this option, it would look a lot like what it was already designed in the other side of Kinnaman, and would be familiar and ultimately provide as much protection for existing property or the right-of-way or areas outside of the right-of-way as we could. One of the drawbacks of this option is the fact that the trees that are on that south side, there are a number that are going to be impacted by the location of that sidewalk and by more of the asphalt and more in the growing road section that we would have here. So you would see the character change a little bit in the roadway, but this option ultimately was the least impactful to right-of-way. And here you can see these red areas are the right-of-way that would be needed. As I talked about, side streets where we're seeing our curb ramp returns, but otherwise there's no red in here. So we're not going to see impacts outside of existing right-of-way. Option number 2, we've got on the north side, the exact same thing that we just saw in that last option, but on the south side, we're going to do a little bit of a meandering sidewalk. We're going to be able to preserve some of those the trees that are in there, maybe even reutilize some of the existing sidewalk that's in there. And that character really will tie into kind of a little bit more of a the feel for the corridor would reflect a little bit more of what's out there right now. You can see it here. There is a little bit more impacts outside of a right of way, a little bit more red, but you also see the green. We do know that stormwater is going to be a big future discussion. That's really what we're going to turn our attention to after we've got a design recommendation from the Board of County Commissioners. And so if we had these areas that were, if option 2 was selected, some of these green areas could be used for LIDA or other low impact development, stormwater locations that could help offset some of the impacts that we're going to see for stormwater in this area. And we do know that the way that this road currently flows, it flows east-west sort of at the middle, and then north-south, we've got 2 different drainage basins. So there's some interesting nuance and interesting characteristics here that we're going to have to really be designing around as we're looking at this. And so option 3, we'll look here, is very similar to what we saw in option 1 and 2 on the north side. Again, the differences here are really on the south side. We did maintain the on-street bike lane because we heard from users that we've talked with that live in this area that they would probably prefer to just travel through with the on-street facilities. And if there weren't on-street facilities, then they would likely not use the sidewalk. They would just use the travel lane. So we did maintain that. That is something that could be removed. It doesn't really change the design all that much, but that is something that we know that if this option is selected, there may be some differences as far as the outcomes with regards to what you're seeing here. But the big difference is that 10-foot sidewalk. So in this case, it would be a separated bike facility that would also, or separated pedestrian facility that could also serve bike users that was 10 feet wide. The impact there is more substantial to areas of the private property on the south side. We're definitely seeing more impacts to right of way, more impacts to fences. We're seeing some of the challenges there with the trees and the impacts there. And the stormwater impacts too, we'll be looking at, as far as the additional impervious surface that would create. So that's really what we saw as far as our three options, really looking at the different components of this portion of Kinnaman. We had the open house from September 16th to October 2nd. We had 231 visitors. We had about 40 responses. Lots of folks had a preference as far as, we kind of, from those comments that we got of the 38 comments, we had 16 that expressed a preference. So we did have a lot of folks that were saying they preferred one over the other. Heard a lot of folks that liked options 1 and 2, a few fewer for option 3. We don't really, as a team, necessarily have a preference, but we definitely appreciate all the feedback. We do think that option 1 and option 2 represent very balanced approaches to what's going to be to areas outside the right of way and ultimately impacts the property owners. But we do know that option 3 has its own benefits as well. So we're going to present these options. We're really looking right now, drilling into costs. We think that option 3 is going to cost the most of these 3 options. Option 2 is probably going to cost somewhere in the middle, and then option 2 will probably be the least expensive. As far as costs go, that's only part of the equation. That's only part of the discussion with the Board of County Commissioners. But we also know that right-of-way acquisition is part of those additional costs. So if we have to get additional right-of-way, that's a cost as well as something we're thinking about as a consideration. And then we're also thinking about what we're doing as far as stormwater, as I said out there. We do understand that there are other issues. We did have some other comments related to that were outside of preferences or express preferences, things like traffic safety and traffic calming. Looking at the tree preservation, we talked a little bit about that. Livability, encampments. We talked with Washington County Sheriffs this evening. They were visiting on some of that. And then there's some other there were some other topics, some other threads that came up in those comments that were submitted during the open house. Right now, we are looking at a Board of County Commissioners review for these 3 options that I've shown y'all tonight. That's likely to be in January. But actually, I think after meeting with my consultant team this week, I'm going to revisit that and say it's probably more likely it's going to be in February. We're looking in spring and summer, finishing the design and permitting, getting the right-of-way process resolved where we need to, working with property owners on that. We have a great right-of-way team that will be doing that. And then in fall of 2023, we'll look at bidding this contract, getting the contractor on board, and then look to begin construction. And then that will continue through 2024. The next 6 months are really where we're going to focus just here briefly as I close out my presentation. We got to finish the traffic analysis and learn a little bit more about what's going to be needed at 209th as far as the type of facilities and type of turn lanes that might be needed there now and in the future. So that's something we're continuing to study. So I don't have good information on exactly what we're going to see now at this point. I can tell you a little bit about what we're studying, but I don't necessarily have those outcomes to share with you tonight, but we're working on that. Once we have that in hand, we're going to confirm those findings with our team, get our experts to take a look at it and make sure they agree. And then we'll work with the city of Hillsborough to finalize that, work with Reed's Crossing, and start putting a plan into place that reflects all the requirements that unfold as a result of that. Like I've already mentioned, we're going to go to the Board of County Commissioners, have that bike facility selection where they're going to pick one of those 3 options, and then we're going to move forward with our concept design for that option and say, hey, we've got this, Board of County Commissioners just said option 1 or option 2 or option 3. Can we actually build this? Is it constructible? And that's what we're really going to be studying. I mean, we know in theory it is, but again, the stormwater is one I keep talking about. We got to figure out somewhere for that to go. So that's going to be one that we're going to have to come up with some creative solutions. And we've already got some that we've identified, but it's part of the next steps that we're really going to be diving into. So with that, I think there was one, I'm going to leave my chat, my right of way is right of way. Yes, Becky, sorry. That's a very good question. I just saw your comment there. If there's other questions that people want to drop in the chat, we can respond to that. I will leave up my contact information. If folks want to shoot me an email, if they don't want to ask a question now, you're welcome to send me a follow-up email and I can correspond with y'all. I'm also happy. I'm meeting some of the property owners in that area on site. I've already met with some of the folks out there and will continue to do so if folks have questions they want to talk about in person. But with that, I'm going to shut up and see if we got other questions from folks about what we're doing out there. Bus parking for Master's House on street considered. There's not a current bus stop there, I don't believe. Are you saying a future bus stop, Eric?
So I've unmuted myself. If you can hear me, wonderful.
Yep.
So I'm a past chair of CPO6, not speaking in that capacity. I am speaking as the president of the Aloha Oregon Historical Society. The Master's House underwent a master's plan with some public input, but it's owned by the city of Hillsborough. And the long-term vision is that there may be some visitation or some like school kids visiting on a school bus. And their master plan is what I'm trying to figure out if you've considered in context of your planning of this street. And so when you responded as bus stop, that would be a great additional thing to speak to, because South Hillsborough is going to put a tremendous amount of pressure. But as we all know, TriMet doesn't do planning until we've got rooftops. My question specifically, have you liaised with the city of Hillsborough regarding the Master's House master's plan for traffic for that part of the street? And one of the things that we talked about was bringing buses of school kids in, as opposed to having a school bus get in and out on a narrow driveway. Having street parking makes a lot of sense, and now's the time to plan for it. Has this been considered?
Actually, street parking is not appropriate in this. It's actually not allowed on a collector. So street parking is not going to be part of the equation here. We do know that that the current driveway, and you can see it right here, is not going to be sufficient. And we have done had some initial conversations with Master's House folks, City of Hillsborough, and engaged with them on what we want to see as far as a design solution there. The more likely outcome is to provide some sort of access that's going to be a little bit different. It might be here off 204th. It might be a larger driveway. We're going to work with them once we've got a design selected to move that conversation a little further along and help them provide an access that will align with some of the expectations of that plan. We haven't gotten that far yet as far as what that might look like. Like you hit the nail on the head with TriMet. I mean, we know that there's not a bus stop, at least at this point, planned for TriMet service. There's something that may, we will see with Reed's Crossing, the possibility that they're going to expand their service here. And that's something we'll be thinking about. The one great thing about this design, I think it will lend itself well, whatever option we select, to create bus pads in the future. I think you could install bus pads, landing pads within this corridor. As far as bus pullouts, that would be, I think maybe that's a little bit harder to plan for now at this point without knowing exactly where the service stops might be. But I think you're really talking about the Master's House access. And if I'm hearing you right there, we'll continue to work with them and work to provide access that really meets the current and future need. But yeah, it's something we'll continue to keep within our mind.
Thanks. Just a closing comment on that. The Aloha community doesn't have many history sites, let alone ones that have been archaeologically preserved. So the request is, I know that's not going to be allowed, however, exceptions are made for specific reasons, to try to chew up the existing rare site that we don't have a lot of for bus parking, because we're not going to provide for it in new construction, damages history that we're trying to preserve. And I also get it. I don't want history to be preserved at somebody's safety expense. But now's when we do design and we talk about this, and I would just hope you take this as a credible recommendation. It's something worth talking about, and if access is how we get the problem solved, great. But we did LIDAR and hand digging and uncovered archaeological assets from the 1800s on that site, and I'd like to protect it. That's what history organizations do. So thank you for the excellent answers. I clearly felt that I was heard. You did a great job. Thanks.
Thanks, Eric. We have a question here. Will there be electronic speed limit signs on Kinnaman? Traffic moves fast between 198th and 209th. They're not planned as part of this project. There are some opportunities, and I can share resources here in the chat for folks to submit requests for Washington County to deploy those types of resources. And that's something that would be a separate request outside of this Kinnaman project. We are studying speed. We are studying what's going to be necessary as far as safety upgrades. There likely will be additional signage as far as things like speed bumps or other things. Those are less likely, but not out of the realm of possibility. At this point, we're really looking more at the upgrades, as signage and crossing upgrades are really going to be the majority of what we're seeing as part of this project. But I will share before I get off the link for the safety campaign if folks want to submit a request for Washington County to bring the trailer out or to study more long-term solutions.
Hey, I have a quick question, and I may have missed this, but are the utility lines going underground?
The power lines?
Yeah.
No, those will not. We're just going to, we'll relocate them depending upon where the limits of the right of way are. We'll have to work with the utility providers to do that. It wasn't something that was done on the other side at 198th either. And if it had been done there, it would probably have been more likely that we would have continued that, but it's not something at this point that was done in that area. But it's a great idea. In the future, I hope that there's opportunities to continue to look at how we can do that.
Right. Any other questions for Ryan?
Yeah, I got one. Yeah, Ryan, I was just curious. I mean, you're impacting a lot of the residential houses and properties, right? So how does that work with the jurisdictions? You know, do they condemn a certain part of their people's property, or how does that work with putting in a new roadway like this, expanding it?
Yeah, and the impact, we've really tried to pay close attention to the impact. So I mean, we can look at, like I said, option 3. I just dropped that neighborhood safety campaign. Sorry, Ken, just to let everyone know that's in the chat. So let's go here and look at option 3.
Sure.
I'll go back over to my screen. So you can see here the red areas. They're a little harder to see, and I'd be happy to send this as a follow-up. They're a little bit larger files, but we can definitely get them out there. We do have, I think, and I can work with Heather. Heather's on this call. The open house website could be, I'm sure, reactivated, so we could have folks go back and visit that if they have any questions on these. But let's go back to your question, Ken. Impacts outside of right-of-way impacts the property owners. I'll give you a little bit of the thought process, and I'll give you a little bit about what ultimately comes next. Let's say option 3 is selected, which we do know, we've already studied it, has the largest impact outside of right-of-way. Fences, people's backyards, trees, things like that. That's definitely something that we recognize and we don't take lightly as far as those impacts go. We know that there's real costs associated with that. We have a right-of-way team that recognizes that as well. And so they begin the process working with those homeowners, again, if option 3 is selected, to go through that process and monetize those impacts, and then ultimately work with those individuals to secure those additional areas outside the right-of-way to do the project. It's not a short process. It's not necessarily a process that isn't fraught with, maybe not necessarily everybody seeing eye to eye, but it is one that ultimately is handled very fairly. And the Washington County team is generally very available to follow up with property owners and help them understand why it's necessary in this case for them to be working with us to secure these additional areas of rights of way. We do recognize that the project itself is, at least at its core, is trying to bring additional resources to this area, additional crossing upgrades for ADA ramps that are going to provide safer crossings for folks that may be handicapped or otherwise wanting to be able to have access to this corridor and be able to travel through it safely. There's going to be additional opportunities for folks to get to and from school safely. The rapid flashing beacon is going to be an upgrade. So we do hope that those discussions can help illuminate some of those trade-offs. Yes, we are going to be needing some additional property from some of the property owners, again, under some assumptions. Option 3 is going to be the most impactful. So, but we do hope that.
What happens when someone really doesn't want to do anything? They just want to leave it. Does that create a problem, or how does that get resolved?
There's a couple of ways that can be resolved. One is that we can look at options for, changing the design.
Sure.
Option 3, for example, let's just say we had a property owner where we had an impact from the sidewalk. This is, I don't want to pick out a particular property, but let's just say it's impacting the fence. In that case, maybe there's an opportunity to shift it a little bit. That may change the impact on an adjacent property. So, there's a little bit of give and take there as far as how we kind of finagle some of those. But there is a process. You talked about condemnation. You talked about some of those pieces that we would go through. It's still one where it would be fair. It would be compensated fairly for that process. So if we got to that point, there are tools in our toolkit that we can deploy. We don't necessarily like to use those, but they are there, and we'll use those only as a last resort if we need to.
Yeah, I have no idea how often that happens, but it's just nice for the public to know.
It's not very often, and
Sure.
Generally we're thinking about that first and foremost. We're not going in blind and saying, let's just build 30-foot sidewalks and who cares what the right-of-way impacts are going to look like. We're really trying to be thoughtful.
I got another follow-up question. It's not really related to this project, but is there such a thing that the transportation department uses, like that's called a refinement area?
I'm not familiar with that term in my area of practice.
Sure.
But I can definitely, and you said it was refinement area?
Yeah, the city of Beaverton has, quote, used that term for roads that are proposed, but are still on a refinement area. That's a Beaverton, city of Beaverton planning quote. So
Okay.
I was, we're going to try and invite Steve Shane. I don't know if he's probably the head of your group, right?
I'm Washington County. If he's city of Beaverton, he would be,
Oh,
I'm not sure. He
Oh.
wouldn't be affiliated with our organization.
Okay.
But I haven't crossed paths with him, but I'd be, if there's another follow-up discussion y'all want me to be a part of, I would always be
no,
happy.
that's fine. I was just curious if the refinement area was a term, and I was looking for a definition of it. So
I don't have that offhand, but I could definitely look into it, and I could correspond with Becky after the fact and see if I can find something, if there's something Washington County uses that's similar. I'll see what I can
sure.
find.
Thanks.
Great. Any other questions for Ryan?
I'm gonna put my contact information up one more time, just in case anybody wants to capture it. And like I said, if folks do have requests for me to meet out on site or want to get some follow-up, I would, if there's anybody that wants to submit public comment, the Board of County Commissioners will still review those before they make their decision. So you're welcome to send those to me as well. You can also send them over to the Board of County Commissioners. We can provide that contact information if you want that specifically, so you can send them directly to them. I don't have that ready, but I'm sure Heather can get it for us. We can get it out to you, Becky.
Okay.
But otherwise, always available for these types of things, and I appreciate the invite.
Fantastic. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Sorry we were running a little late tonight.
No
I
worries
appreciate
at
you being
all.
patient.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks everyone. Y'all have a great night.
Yeah, you too. All right, before we move on to the development thing, I just wanted to mention really quickly, and I think Heike is here, but Intel has a project that they're going to start working on, and construction is starting on that soon. So I just wanted to let people know, if you're in that area, that I'll show this really quick, that they're building this new area right here, and so that is going to be happening. So just be aware, I guess. Construction's going to be between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. and hopefully finished this month. So hopefully it won't be too much of a disturbance for the neighborhood. And then, okay, so I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about the development project. We've gotten quite a few emails about this, and I know that the neighbors are very interested in this project. And unfortunately, Ken and I, and then we have Joy, our secretary, but we don't have a steering committee, and so it just can be kind of difficult for us to be able to give everything that we want to give enough of our attention. And so just a plug again that we're always looking for people to join our steering committee so we can put a little bit more focus onto these things. But anyway, I just wanted to show that, just make people aware. Oh, let me go back and change this really quick. We're going to put up some information on our Facebook page. And then, hang on, I'm trying to switch up my Zoom here. Okay, here we go. Switch it to this really quick. And while I'm doing this, if you want to be able to speak and make a comment, please just go ahead and raise your hand, and then we can start going through the comments. All right, so the development is here. Here's Bany, and then goes through to here. And then this is around 189th. And so this is the property that they are looking to develop. And this is the website where you can go, and we'll put this on our Facebook page again, or if you want this information and you're not on Facebook, just send us an email and I can send this to you. But this area here is where they are looking at putting in these houses. So let's see here. Is there anybody who wants to make a comment? Let me see. Sorry, I have cats bothering me here, so. All right, I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. Oh, Nancy,
allowed her to
there's
talk.
Nancy.
Yeah, can you hear
great,
me?
thank you, sorry. Yeah, hi, Nancy.
Hi. So we have until December 7th at 4 o'clock to submit any comments or concerns that we have about the new development going in. And I know there's quite a few people that live on 189th going down to Farmington that may not have received the letter, the notice, the public notice. I think it only reached people within 500 feet of the developed, proposed developed area. So they want to, I just wanted to get the word out on that everybody that wants to make a comment should, especially on traffic. That's something we heard a lot about in this neighborhood, that people are concerned about traffic, and the road is not very wide. And they don't intend to do anything to improve the road. And will a notice also be posted?
Yeah, so what you sent me, I will post on our
Okay.
Facebook page. Yeah,
Okay.
I meant to do that earlier, but it's been crazy.
Okay. Yeah. And on the
yeah.
notice, on the left-hand side of the notice, about midway down, it'll have the comment period, and just below that, there's a website. And on that website, that's the link where you can fill out a form. You can either mail your concerns in, or you can just fill out this form and submit it. That would probably be the easiest for most people. And so, and I have offered you with Becky, I've given you my name and email and cell phone. If somebody has any questions, or, you know, I'd be happy to walk anybody through it, because I'm just hoping that we get enough comments in that, you know, otherwise this is our chance. You know, you just lose out if you don't make the comments. So.
Yeah. Can you put your number, your contact information in the chat for the people who are here tonight? Yeah. And then I'll also post that on Facebook. And then I just want to make a comment really quickly that in January, February, Ken and I are trying to work out having somebody, Ken kind of mentioned this, but somebody come and kind of give an overview of what the planning process looks like for these developments, and when the times are that the community can make comments, and just kind of how the whole thing works, so that we all have a really good understanding of what our role is in being able to comment on these things. And so one of the things I really want to note about this is that this commenting period is really important, because if you don't comment, then once a decision is made, you are not able to appeal. Only people who have made comments, or, you know, been at the meeting and spoken up in person, are able to file appeals once the decision has been made. So if you want the option to appeal it, you need to comment.
Yes, and I was going to tack onto that, Becky, that as you know, I talked with Stephen Shane. He is the principal planner at Washington County. So I'd like to solicit, questions from our constituents about what to ask him besides what you've already mentioned, because we're going to try and get him or somebody on his staff to present to the CPO at one of our meetings first quarter of next year. So we want to get all of our ducks in a row, get some good questions lined up. So we'll be posting this occasionally on our website and all that stuff. So just keep that in mind. We're going to be looking for questions.
Definitely. Yeah, we've really had a lot more than usual contact lately from community members about the developments. And I think, probably part of that is just that there's a lot more happening than there was, back, in the COVID days. And so the increase in development means, an increase in questions about it. And so I think it's a really good idea for us to try to help everybody have a really good understanding of how the process works, what we can do and what we can't do, and just so people don't miss out on those opportunities that they have. And I guess the other thing that I want to add to that is that Ken and I, we have some knowledge, not all of it. I mean, we're community members just like everybody else, and we, volunteer our time doing this. And we would love to have people who are interested join our steering committee, and then we would be able to kind of have more people to help us work through these things. I think it's just really kind of a complicated system to understand. And so the more that we can talk to each other about it and pass along information, I think the better, because I think that there's been, I don't know if it's a misunderstanding, or I think that we also need to have kind of a session on what the CPO is, because I think most people don't even know. Like, a lot of people don't even know that they are a member of the CPO or that the CPO exists. And so I think it's important to kind of reiterate to the community that we're community members, just like you. We're your neighbors. And this is a way that is set up for us to be able to work together and communicate with each other, and be able to pass that along to the higher powers that be at the county. And so the more people there are, the more power we have. We can write letters, we can do those things if we have more people. So we would love to have you join us. If you're interested in being on the steering committee, it's not a huge commitment. We'll meet, we would talk about kind of, what our expectations are as far as, and the whole CPO process is changing. The county is changing everything. And so it's just so in limbo right now. It's just hard to kind of get it all nailed down. But anyway, long story short, we're here. We want to help you. We just don't have the capacity to do everything that we want to do. So please join us, please help. And we can do a lot more than we're doing. So do you have anything to add to that, Ken? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have maybe
Joy.
like a suggestion or a proposal. Previously, Lyles used to dedicate maybe about like 10 minutes or so at the end of the CPO meetings to go over any land use proposals, public meetings, things like that. And I feel like we've kind of moved away from that. And I don't know if it's maybe you just don't have the bandwidth to do that. But if we had maybe somebody on like a steering committee who oversaw that, like I don't know how those are exactly received, like if there's like a key to a PO box or something, but to go over those, because I've been finding that the first that I hear about some of these developments is when somebody emails the CPO6 leadership board. But I haven't heard about it previously, or like even just, I happen to notice something in my neighborhood, like, oh, I guess we're widening a street here, but I hadn't been aware that that was going on.
Right.
So maybe if we kind of just reserve time within the CPO meetings to do that, that might be really helpful. And, again, if that's something that, you maybe want to delegate to, if somebody does want to step up and is interested in like kind of doing that sort of like a public meeting / land use updates function, I guess. I don't really know what we would call it, but that might just be a good way to have that time reserved and keep that kind of discussion open.
Yes, and actually I love that. I did try to keep up with that after I took over for Lyles. You guys, Lyles is so amazing and he's so organized. You should see the boxes that he gave me. It was for me at the time, as a full-time, master's student, all these other things I'm doing, I'm not going to go into all of it or anything, but we get a lot of mail. It's a lot. And it takes a lot of time to sit down and look through it all. And some of the packets I get on some of these developments are like this thick.
Oh, yeah.
They're huge with fold out maps and just, you wouldn't believe it.
I remember Lyles straight up stacking when we were meeting in person prior to the pandemic. So yeah, that might be like an option for like kind of just an officer to oversee that if anybody's interested, or, if several people are interested, then we kind of just work out how we want to do it. But I think that would be really helpful to get that back in our monthly discussions.
That's something we really want to do for sure. So, and I don't know, I thought the county was supposed to email us on just like these type 2 or type 3 public notices. And are you getting those at all?
No, we just get the mail, the physical mail in the mailbox.
Somebody's got to get that to us. Besides, we don't want to see the packets. We just want to see the public notice. So,
yeah. So that's definitely something that, that I will take on, trying to get that back up and running. Again, now that my Lego League is almost over, but, I will do that. And then, if somebody wants to join our steering committee and just kind of be in charge of that, that would be great. One of the challenges with that is getting the graphics. I really want to have the graphics to show. And I used to try to put them into a slideshow with all the information to show during the meetings. And also, to put up on our Facebook page. But it just took a lot of time to go through everything and then try to get all those graphics made up, cutting and pasting and, screenshotting and all of that. So I wish there was a better way for that. But if that's somebody's thing that you like to do, that would be very helpful.
I think it's also good for the community as well, because as Nancy mentioned, that whole like 500-foot issue is like literally where your house is and not like where maybe your driveway is. So I know we've run into things previously where like, okay, the people on this side of the road got notified, but the people on the other side didn't get notified, even though it's the same road and it's still going to be affected. So
exactly.
The more we can do to make this information available, I think the better.
Yeah. And, I'm just going to be really honest that both Ken and I live on Cooper Mountain. And so there's been a lot of stuff going on Cooper Mountain that has taken our attention personally, just because this is our area where we live. And so I would love to have people from other places in the CPO, that can kind of, have a better grasp on what's going on over on that side. So yeah, that would be great. Yeah, any questions or comments? I put this in the chat to answer Richard's question. Oh, great. But yeah, you can email us at, oh, good, Lyles. Thank you, Lyles. Hi. Lyles, you should be able to talk if you unmute.
Okay, can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay, just a reminder for the person that was talking about local notice, when those notices go out, when you get it in the mailbox, also those notices are sent to a group of neighbors within a certain radius of that development.
Yes.
So you're not the only one that gets stuff.
No, we're just trying to get Lyles, I think we're trying to get an electronic email sent to the CPO6, distribution list.
Yeah, I understand that, and that's a good idea.
Yeah, and I think Nancy might have been saying that the people who are living on the street over, who are traveling on that street and living over there, but are 500, more than 500 feet away, don't receive the notice, but it's going to affect them as far as the traffic is concerned. Nancy, if I'm wrong about that, you jump in and correct
That's
me.
correct. Yeah, absolutely correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, Nancy, is there anything else that we can say or anything that can help with that? Now we'll put that up on our Facebook page, and then of course, people can email us.
Yeah, I think that's it for right now. And I may be going door to door. I've been emailing and calling, trying to get all the neighbors to help me out to get the people that want to make a comment. So I'll just continue to do that especially over the weekend. But I can keep you updated and I will also reach out because I've already mentioned that I will volunteer. I would attend the steering committee. I'll jump in with what I can do, but I'm not an expert in this area. I'm learning.
Yeah, and that's the same. Before COVID, they actually had some training. The county had some training programs for CPO leaders, and where they talked about planning and kind of gave the basics overviews and stuff like that. And they just haven't been doing that lately. I happen to know a little bit about planning just because, of the field that I work in, which is not planning, but is kind of related to planning. And so, I can kind of follow some of the stuff, but if I didn't know some of the stuff that I know, it would be really hard for me to understand the process. And I think even the developers don't understand the process sometimes. So that we've been getting a lot of that too, is that developers want to come and hold their neighborhood meeting here in the CPO meeting. And if we only had one every once in a while, that would be fine. But we've been getting a lot of requests for that, and it doesn't meet their legal obligation. And then also, we'd like to be able to focus on some other things too that kind of have to do with the whole CPO. But we have done that, and we can still, consider doing that in the future. But anyway, yeah, you do not have to be an expert. We learn as we go, and there are other things we can do. One of the things that, was my goal to work on is building community. It's hard to do when we're on Zoom. But I think that the path that the county is taking right now, as far as the CPOs go, and the work that they're doing on that system, is still having to do with land use, but also focusing a little bit more on community building. And so that's, I've always thought it would be fun to have a table at the farmers market. I know that for those of you who don't know, there's going to be a tree lighting that the Aloha Business Association and a couple other people have been working on. And so they're going to bring back the tree lighting ceremony in the little shopping center down there where Basics Market is. So I think all that kind of stuff is fun, and for community members to get to know each other will definitely make our CPO stronger. So if you like planning things, or you like connecting with people, you don't have to know about planning. So yeah. Any other questions or comments before we sign off for the night? All right, so information will be going up on Facebook. This meeting was recorded, and the link will go on our Facebook page. But if you're not on Facebook and you want the link to YouTube for the recording of the meeting, email us at cpo6leaders@gmail.com and we can send you that link. Questions, comments, you can email us, and we can hopefully steer you in the right direction. If you want to join us, that is great. I'd love to have a little meeting soon for those who would like to join the steering committee, and we can just kind of talk about, what we do. Yeah. Anything, Ken, or for them?
No, you got it all. Thanks.
I feel like I just talked a lot.
Good job.
But it's nice because everybody is quiet and listening to me, unlike my little Lego kids. So it's been great. Okay. Well, I guess that is it for tonight. Everybody take care. And
Thanks for
Have a good
coming,
weekend.
everybody. Yep.
Yeah, thank you.